Hello everyone, my name is Bethan Edwards and I am the Academic Director here at Specialist Language Courses, and today we're going to cover how to express the purpose of the letter for OET writing. So before starting, just a few tips for our session. First of all, the session is being recorded, but feel free to take notes or screenshots, etc. But please know that we'll be sharing this on our YouTube channel, which is here. So don't forget to subscribe for tips and strategies on our YouTube channel. Second, I'm going to be using polls and chats in order to interact in the lesson today. So there's a couple of things to know. That we'll be using the chat function to complete any tasks during our live class. We'll be using polls to also ask questions. So when a poll comes up on your screen, select the answer you want and click submit. And you can also ask any questions in the questions and answer box. In order to do this, click on the Q&A icon, type your question, and then I'll do my best to answer these at the end of the class today. And third, don't forget to register for our next live lesson, which is on Thursday, and our topic will be reading aid tips and strategies, and the link will be in the chat box for you now. Okay, let's get started with our session today. So we're going to cover what is the purpose of an OET letter, how you can identify the purpose, and how to write the purpose. Okay, now my first poll is, what do you already know about the purpose of OET letters? So I'm going to share the poll, and there are 3 statements about the purpose of an OET letter. I'd like you to choose which one is true. So choose A, B, or C for the one you think is true. So let's go. Okay, you should see the poll on your screen now. Make sure you click to choose your answer. Okay, great, everybody's voting. Make sure you read each statement carefully. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll now. We'll have a look at your results and what you think is the true statement. So let's share the results. So there was a bit of debate between which one is the true answer, but the majority of you have chosen B, which is correct. So this is the correct answer. Let's have a look at why the other answers are not true. So we have B, the purpose paragraph in an OET letter must always include the patient's name. So this is true. You always need to include the patient's name in the purpose paragraph. This helps the reader to know who they're reading about. A is not correct. Make sure you read it carefully. A is the purpose of an OET letter is not always stated in the first paragraph. This is false. You need to make sure that the purpose of the letter is clear in the first paragraph, and today we're going to explore why. C, you should always start your letter with "I am writing to refer." This is also false. This it depends on what type of letter you're writing. So it may be a referral letter, but it could be a different type of letter with a different purpose. So you need to be careful with the phrase that you choose when you are starting your OET letter and writing the purpose. So what is the purpose of a letter? So this applies to OET, but it also applies to formal letters in general. So the purpose of a letter tells us the reason for writing, so why you're writing this letter. This helps orientate the reader to understand what to expect in the letter. It is typical of formal letters, and it is stated at the beginning of a letter. So it's important that the purpose of the overall purpose of the letter is stated at the beginning. So why is the purpose of the letter important? So this is where I'd like you to share your ideas. So can you write in the chat box, please? Why do you think the purpose or a clear purpose in your letter is important? Okay, so we've got some good ideas coming in here. So we have an idea, the reader knows what you want from them, what you need the other person to do. So the reader will know right away what is the aim of the letter. This is really important. So we have an idea that the reader knows exactly what they need to do right at the beginning. Okay, so the purpose of the letter, a clear purpose helps the reader to find key details quickly. So the purpose of the letter, if you give the overview of the reason for writing, this then helps the reader to find those details quickly. It helps the reader to understand the situation or the context of the letter. It helps them to understand what they need to do, as many of you pointed out. Also, a clear purpose will increase your score in OET. So you're aiming to get the highest score possible that you can in your OET writing exam. So making sure that you have a clear purpose will increase your score in OET. Now, let's have a think about what are some of the reasons for writing an OET letter. So again, let's come to the chat box. For those of you who have OET experience from the practice that you've done or the letters you've seen, what are some of the reasons for writing an OET letter? Okay, we've got some great ideas coming into the chat. Okay, great. So we've got lots of ideas on the type of letter that you might need to write. Okay, so we've got a lot of information. So we've got, for example, a lot of you mentioned discharge or referral. We've also got some more specific answers referring for follow-up tests or specific tests, for example. Great, okay. So let's have a look at some of the common reasons for writing. So to request ongoing care, this is quite a broad reason and is likely to come up a lot, particularly in OET nursing, to inform the reader of the patient's current condition. So this may apply to a lot of different reasons for writing, but can also come up quite frequently in OET medicine if a patient has had in-hospital treatment and is being discharged. You might transfer the care of the patient, so transferring to another healthcare professional, perhaps another healthcare authority, perhaps a patient is moving from one city to another, or to request further assessment or management, particularly common in OET medicine. You may also perhaps have hospital admission as well, so you're transferring temporary care to patient to hospital. So it's important when you're practicing for your OET writing to be aware of how your writing is assessed. So in order to do this, we need to look at the OET assessment criteria. So how can you fulfill the purpose criterion when you're writing an OET letter? So the purpose is marked on a scale of 0 to 3. 3 is the highest mark that you can get. And we can see in the description, in order to get a 3, the purpose of the document, so the purpose of your letter, is immediately apparent and then sufficiently expanded. So this means you need to make it clear why you are writing right in that very first paragraph, as we've discussed. So you need to make the purpose, your reason for writing, immediately clear. So you do this in your first paragraph. Then we have this other description here, where is the purpose sufficiently expanded? So you need to make sure that you expand and refer back to the main purpose later in the letter. So this may be throughout the letter. You need to keep the overall purpose, for example, transfer or ongoing care. You need to keep the overall purpose in mind. Then you need to make sure that the details relating to this purpose are clear later in the letter. And perhaps you may need to restate the purpose of the letter at the end, but make sure you use paraphrasing and make sure it's appropriate for your letter. Now, our next question in the next part of our class today is, how do you know what the purpose is? So now we know what the purpose consists of. So we're going to look at how you can work out the purpose. So it's really important for you to be familiar with the case notes, and it's really helpful for you to know where to look in the case notes to find the purpose of the letter. So in order to find the purpose of the letter, you should look at the notes. So all case notes, whether they're medicine or nursing or any of the other professions, will have notes at the top. And then you will have a writing task at the bottom. So this is the first place for you to start in order to start to find out what the purpose is. So you read the notes at the top, and then you read the writing task at the bottom or the end of the case notes. And as you are looking at the notes and as you are looking at the writing task, you should start to ask yourself some key questions to make sure that you understand the purpose. So you need to find out, who am I? So who are you writing as? You need to know who is the patient, so the name of the patient, perhaps the age if relevant. You need to know who you're writing to. So this is key. Who is reading your letter, as this will inform the decisions that you make on what you need to put in the purpose and the content of the letter. And you need to know why you're writing, so the overall purpose. So we're going to have a look at an example together. So we have some extracts from some extracts on the screen. So we've got the notes and we've got the writing task. And we're going to ask ourselves our 4 key questions. So I'm going to give you a minute to read through the information on the screen and start answering the 4 key questions. Just do this in your head. There's no need to write in the chat box at this stage. Okay, so let's have a look at our key questions. It's important that you're familiar with this kind of information and the format so that you can then quickly and efficiently find this information during your exam. So our first question, who am I? So the first question, who am I? Here. So who am I? You are the charge nurse at Somerton Community Hospital. Who is the patient? Your patient is Mr. Smith. Who am I writing to? So here we need to look at the writing task. So you're writing to Emma Humphrey, who is a nurse, the nurse at Somerton Retirement Home. And why am I writing? So we need to look in the notes and the writing task. So we know that Mr. Smith is being discharged today, so we can see this is a discharge letter. And then we look to the writing task for more information. So in the writing task, we find out that we're writing to inform Ms. Humphrey of the patient's current situation and the care required. Now, there's another key piece of information in the writing task, which is the existing relationship. So we can see, reading carefully in the case notes, that Mr. Smith lives at Somerton Retirement Home. Therefore, we understand that there is a relationship between Ms. Emma Humphrey and Mr. Smith. So it's really important that you read the case notes quickly, efficiently, but carefully to see if there is an existing relationship. So why is it important to consider this? So you need to make sure that you check to see if there's any existing relationship to help you decide how to write the purpose and what information needs to be included in there. So some common existing relationships to watch out for between the patient and the reader. So Mr. Smith and Ms. Emma Humphrey. It's possible there could be a relationship between the writer and the reader, but this is less common in my experience. And there could be a relationship between the reader and the family members. For example, if a son or a daughter cares for an elderly parent and they've taken them to their own GP, there could be a relationship there. So it's important to notice if there's any relationship so that you can explain the situation clearly. You can orientate the reader. For accuracy, remember you are awarded in OET in the other criteria for the accuracy of your letter. It will help you to choose which verb you want to use when you're writing your letter. So if there is no relationship, you might use introduce or refer. If there's an existing relationship, you might use a verb like return, for example. Also, you need to be aware of if you're writing, for example, if it's a hospital discharge letter or transfer letter back to the patient's GP, you might at some stage in the purpose paragraph refer to the patient as your patient to show that you understand that relationship between the patient and the reader. Okay. Also, it helps you to select the relevant content for the main body of the reader. So if you're aware of this relationship, then there may be some known information that you don't need to include in your OET letter. So how should you write the purpose? So this is where we are going to, it's your turn and we're going to practice together. So here are some extracts from some case notes, and you have got 5 key questions on the right-hand side. So notice there's one extra question we've added here, which is, does the reader know the patient? So I'm going to give you a minute and I'd like you to read through the information and start to answer these questions yourself. Okay, so let's take a look at this together. So our first question is, who am I? So you need to look at the notes and decide, who am I? So let's take a look. So who am I? We need to find out who you are, and we can check here. You are a hospital doctor working on a medical ward. So you're a hospital doctor. So we can see that this is related to medicine today. Our second question, who is the patient? So we need to know the name of the patient. So our patient is Mr. George Hepburn. We can see that he's 71 years old here. Okay. Okay. Who am I writing to? So this is where we need to look into the writing task. Who am I writing to? If we look down at the bottom of the screen, we're writing to Ms. van der Water, and she is the manager at Humbertown Care Home. Okay, so this is who is reading our letter. Then we have why am I writing? So we've got the two places for us to look. So why am I writing? We need to check to see if there's any information in the notes on the type of letter. And then we come here and we find we need to write a transfer letter. And we need to outline the patient's treatment summary and their ongoing care needs. Okay. And then question number 5, I'd like to put this into the chat box. Does the reader know the patient? So write your ideas in the chat box. Does the reader know the patient already? Does Ms. van der Water know the patient or not? What do you think? Great. So everybody, I've got a resounding no from everybody, which is great. That is exactly right. Our answer is no. There is no existing relationship between them. How do we know this? So first of all, it's a transfer letter. So we can think that probably if it's a transfer letter, then the reader probably hasn't met the patient before. But then we need to check and make sure our assumption is correct. So we come to the case notes and we can see his address here is different to the address of the care home. That's our first clue. But then we can also check our notes, and here it tells us very clearly the patient is unable to return home, transfer to a care home, transfer to a care home. So we can assume that Ms. van der Water does not know Mr. George Hepburn already. Okay. So let's take a look at some sample paragraphs. So using the same extracts of the case notes, I'm going to show you 4 different paragraphs, and I'd like you to choose which one best expresses the purpose for this letter. So I'm going to share my screen and show this to you, and then I'm going to launch a poll where you need to choose A, B, C, or D. So take a minute to read through these 4 options, and then we'll launch the poll. Okay, so let's launch the poll. So when you're ready, choose which paragraph you think best expresses the purpose for this letter. Okay, so we've got lots of people voting, which is great. Okay, which one do you think best expresses the purpose? Okay, so let's have a look at the results. So the majority of you chose C as the paragraph that best expresses the purpose. You are right. So C is the best option here. Let's look at why. So C, we have the name of the patient. We have the reason for writing a transfer and ongoing care. We have the date when he was admitted, so we have an idea of the timeline. We have the medical issue that he was admitted for, and we have the main purpose of this letter. Looking at A, so A has some of this information, but it also has too much detail. So his age and his date of birth would be more appropriate in the RE line above the first paragraph. We have perhaps too many details about the main medical issue. B is too vague. We don't have the main medical issue. So if you're reading this letter, then you won't know why he was admitted. And D is D, this particular student has stated that there is a relationship already between the patient and the reader when that is not the case. So this is not accurate. So make sure your purpose paragraph contains all the necessary information. So when you're writing the purpose, you also need to remember that you have to expand the purpose. So we have the overall reason for writing, the treatment summary, and the ongoing care needs. Then throughout the letter, you need to specify what these ongoing care needs are. So when you're specifying this, if it's in the discharge plan, then just make sure that you read carefully and you understand the difference between informing and requesting. So a request is something that you want the reader to do. So an action that they need to take. And inform is something that you want the reader to know, or something that the reader needs to know. We often find that these two different functions can sometimes be confused when you're under exam pressure. So make sure that when you're looking at the discharge plan and expanding on the purpose, you have a think about this and read carefully. So our top tips for the purpose. So make sure you look at the task and the notes first. Make sure the purpose is expressed clearly in the first paragraph. Provide the details later, and then adapt for each task. Make sure that you're not using the same opening statement for every letter, as it may not always be a referral letter, but you need to adapt to your reader. How can you practice writing the purpose? So look at case notes on the OET website. Practice using those key questions to identify the purpose of a letter in case notes quickly with a variety of case notes. And you can do this as targeted practice. So you can include perhaps 30 minutes only looking at the purpose of a variety of different case notes without writing the whole letter, to really orientate yourself with the case notes and practice. You can write the first paragraph and compare with a sample letter, and you can create a purpose checklist. So something, a list that you have to make sure that you've included all of that information that you might need in the opening paragraph. Okay, so now we've got a few minutes for questions. So if anybody's got any questions, pop them into the question and answer box, and we will do our best to answer them today. Okay, so so we have a question. So we have a general question about OET preparation. So how long does it take to prepare for OET? So that's a very good question. It depends on your starting level, so it can be anywhere from anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. It depends on your starting level, but make sure that when you are doing OET preparation, that you find the best route for you. So you, if it's tuition or for a self-access course, make sure that you choose that best option. So another question we have, do we have to repeat the purpose at the end of a letter? This is a good question. If it's relevant, so you need to make sure that the purpose is very, very clear. And so maybe you may need to paraphrase the purpose at the end. So not necessarily repeat, but use different words to make sure that the reader has understood this. But it's also important to make sure the purpose is clear throughout the letter on those different paragraphs. Okay. Okay. So another question we have. Okay, so another question we have is if the patient is a widow, and if a patient is a widow who lives alone, should you write that in the purpose? This is a good question. Now, it's a question of relevance to the reader and relevance to the situation. So if, for example, the patient lives alone, and that's an important part of the discharge plan or important part of ongoing care, then you may need to write it. It depends how important it is if you put it in the purpose paragraph. For example, if a patient is transferring from their home perhaps to a care home, it may be important to put it in the purpose, but more commonly, this would be a detail that comes later in the letter. Okay. Okay. Great. So thank you everyone for all of your questions. For any questions we haven't had a chance to answer today, then please contact us if you have any more questions, or check out our YouTube channel for more live tips, as they may also have the answer to your questions. So thank you for coming, everyone. It's been really great having you here. Don't forget to register for our next live session, which is on Thursday, where we'll be looking at reading aid tips and strategies. And we'll be doing live lessons every week. So if you loved our live lesson today, then stay tuned to our social media accounts to find out more information. And you can find the links in the chat, and we'll be announcing them, and they'll be pinned to the top. If you are preparing for OET, at the moment we have some really great courses for you. We have Reach OETB Nursing and Reach OETB Medicine. We also have a brand new OET practice test, which can help you with your timing and give you a valuable practice if you're taking the OET exam soon. If you have any questions after this, please don't hesitate to contact us on inquiries@specialistlanguagecourses.com, or you can go to our website on Specialist Language Courses and use the chat function. Okay, that's it for me. Have a lovely day, everybody, and thank you for coming.